Welcome back, everybody. Today we're going deep on something that you might not immediately think of when you think of autism. Hyperhidrosis in adults.
Yeah.
Now, when we think of autism, a lot of times we think about sensory sensitivities or social communication differences.
Right.
But this one kind of flies under the radar a little bit.
It does. It's not something that's talked about very often.
And we're looking at an article from the Cheap ABA website called The Sweaty Truth: Adult Autism and Hyperhidrosis. So let's start with the basics here.
Okay.
When we say hyperhidrosis, what exactly are we talking about?
So hyperhidrosis is a medical condition where somebody sweats way more than their body needs to just to regulate temperature.
Okay.
It's not just sweating. It's excessive sweating that can really impact daily life.
So it's more than just working out and you're sweating or it's a hot day.
Right.
It's more than that.
Exactly. It's something that's persistent, and it can manifest in different ways. Some people experience it in specific areas like their hands or feet or their face.
Okay.
Other people maybe experience profuse sweating when they're feeling anxious or stressed. So you can imagine being on a first date or at a job interview and having really clammy hands.
Yeah, that would be tough.
It can be very nerve-wracking.
And the article also mentioned something about it being triggered by food or other substances.
Yes.
What's that about?
Some people have hyperhidrosis, and they find that certain foods or even environmental factors, like strong scents, can trigger a sweating episode.
Oh, wow.
It's like their body's thermostat is just set to overdrive.
So we kind of have an idea of what it is, but the big question is, why is it connected to autism?
Right.
What's the link there?
So a 2023 study by Stanford University found that actually autistic adults were 3 times more likely to experience hyperhidrosis than neurotypical adults.
I have to admit, when I read that, I was pretty surprised.
Yeah.
3 times, that's a lot.
It is. And there are several theories as to why this connection exists. One theory is that it is triggered by sensory overload and anxiety. So think about it. Someone on the autism spectrum might already be dealing with heightened sensory sensitivities.
Right.
So a loud, crowded environment or certain textures could really send their nervous system into overdrive.
And we know that anxiety can trigger physical responses like sweating.
Exactly. It's like a cascade effect. Sensory overload leads to anxiety, which then can trigger excessive sweating.
Gotcha.
And we also can't rule out social anxiety.
Right, especially with all the social challenges that autistic adults often face.
Right.
I mean, feeling out of sync with social norms or the fear of being judged could definitely trigger anxiety and sweating.
Definitely.
Yeah.
It's a big factor to consider.
For sure.
And then, of course, changes in routine or environment, which we all know can be tough.
Right.
But those can be especially challenging for some autistic individuals.
Yeah.
And that can also lead to anxiety and a spike in sweating.
So you're saying that kind of navigating a world that's not always designed with their needs in mind can add to that stress and anxiety.
Absolutely. Think about the stress of encountering an unexpected change in a daily schedule.
Right.
Or having to navigate a new unfamiliar place.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So that kind of disruption can very easily lead to anxiety and trigger those sweat glands. And then it's not just social situations or changes in routine.
No.
Food sensitivities can play a role too.
Oh, right. We talked about that earlier.
Yeah, so some autistic individuals have sensitivities or intolerances to certain foods.
Okay.
And these reactions can manifest in different ways.
Yeah.
And excessive sweating could be one of them.
Okay, so we kind of have a grasp now on what hyperhidrosis is and how it might connect to autism.
Right.
But let's put ourselves in the shoes of someone who's dealing with this.
Right.
How does it actually affect their daily life?
Right.
I mean, it's got to be more than just a minor inconvenience, right?
Oh, yeah. It goes way beyond just feeling a bit sweaty.
Okay.
Imagine the social anxiety and self-consciousness that could come with constantly worrying about sweating through your clothes or having clammy hands.
Yeah.
This can lead to people avoiding social situations altogether.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
I can definitely relate to that self-consciousness thing.
Yeah.
It's like you're constantly worried about what other people are thinking.
Exactly. And for someone already navigating the social complexities of autism,
Right.
hyperhidrosis can just add an extra layer of difficulty.
Right.
It can make it harder to connect with others and participate in everyday activities.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes a lot of sense.
And it's not just social stuff either. Like,
Okay.
think about practical tasks that require, like, grip or dexterity.
Okay.
Like, if your hands are constantly sweating.
Right.
Simple things like writing or using tools or even just holding your phone
Wow, yeah.
can become really difficult.
Yeah, that's a good point. I didn't even think about that. Like how much we rely on our hands
Right.
for just basic stuff.
Exactly. And for some people, the sweating is so severe that it can interfere with their work or hobbies.
Right.
It can even lead to skin problems,
Oh, no.
like irritation or infection.
Because of the constant moisture, I imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the article also mentioned, like, the impact on sleep.
Mm-hmm.
And so it seems like hyperhidrosis really affects, like, every aspect of your life.
Yeah, night sweats can disrupt sleep
Right.
and then leave individuals feeling like exhausted and drained during the day.
Right. So you're not getting good sleep.
Right.
And then you're more anxious.
Exactly. It's a vicious cycle.
And then you sweat more.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like this horrible cycle.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we've definitely painted a picture of, like, all the challenges.
Right.
But I'm hoping we can end this on a little bit more of a hopeful note here.
Okay.
What can people with autism and hyperhidrosis do
Yeah.
to kind of manage this condition?
Well, the good news is that there are a number of strategies and accommodations
Yeah.
that can make a real difference.
That's good to hear.
Yeah. It's just about finding what works best for each individual.
So what are some things that people can try?
Well, one of the simplest but often overlooked strategies is just paying attention to your clothing choices.
Okay.
Opting for breathable fabrics that wick away moisture
Okay.
can make a huge difference in your comfort levels.
Aren't you?
So natural fibers like cotton or bamboo are good options.
Okay.
But there are also a lot of great synthetic fabrics out there
Uh-huh.
that are designed for moisture management.
Okay, so it's kind of like choosing the right workout gear.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, it can really make a difference.
Make a difference in your performance.
Yeah.
Make you comfortable.
Exactly. And just like athletes have their, go-to gear.
Right.
People with hyperhidrosis can experiment with different fabrics
Uh-huh.
to see what feels best for them.
Now, besides clothing, what about like antiperspirants and stuff like that?
Yeah.
All those sweat-resistant products.
There are tons of options out there.
Right, like a whole aisle at the drugstore.
Exactly. And it's worth trying a few to find what works best for you.
Okay.
Regular antiperspirants might be enough for some people.
Yeah.
But if you need something stronger, you might want to talk to your doctor about clinical strength options,
Okay.
which have higher concentrations of the active ingredients.
Right, so there are options for like the different levels of severity.
Absolutely. And in addition to antiperspirants, there are also sweat-resistant powders and creams
Okay.
that you can apply to like areas that are prone to sweating,
Okay.
like the palms of your hands or your feet.
Gotcha. So we've got clothing, antiperspirants, powders, cream, all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
What about those relaxation techniques we talked
Yes,
about?
right.
How can those help?
Well, you know how we were saying that anxiety is a major trigger for sweating?
Right.
Relaxation techniques can be incredibly effective in calming that nervous system.
Reducing stress level.
Right, and when you reduce stress,
To often reduce sweating.
we sweat less.
Exactly.
Makes sense.
So techniques like deep breathing exercises or mindfulness meditation
Yeah,
can make a real difference.
for sure.
Even just taking a few minutes of focused breathing
Right.
can help calm your body and mind.
Yeah, I know when I'm feeling like stressed or overwhelmed, sometimes just taking like 3 deep breaths, it
Yeah.
really helps to just like recenter.
It's a simple but powerful tool
Yeah,
that,
right.
that you can use anywhere, anytime.
And I imagine that identifying and avoiding triggers
Yes.
would be helpful as well.
Absolutely. Paying attention to what sets off those sweating episodes
Uh-huh.
can help people anticipate them
Okay.
and potentially avoid them,
Avoid them or at least be more prepared.
or at least be prepared.
Yeah.
So you know it's about taking control
Right.
and managing your environment
I like that.
as much as possible.
Like a detective.
Yeah.
Figuring out your triggers.
And then coming up with a plan.
It's about being proactive
I like that.
and finding what works for you.
And then what about accommodations?
Yes.
Like in the workplace, for example.
Right. So someone with hyperhidrosis might benefit from, frequent breaks
Okay.
to cool down or wash up.
Okay.
They might need like modified tasks that reduce physical exertion or anxiety.
Okay.
Or even a flexible schedule.
To allow them to manage it.
Yeah.
So it's all about like open communication and working together to
Exactly.
figure out what works best.
It's about having open conversations and advocating for your needs.
Okay, great. So I think we've covered a lot of ground today.
We have.
We talked about what hyperhidrosis is,
Mm-hmm.
how it connects to autism,
Right.
the challenges that it can create, and some solutions
Yes.
that can hopefully make a difference for people.
It's been a great deep dive.
But before we wrap up,
Okay.
I want to leave you with a little something to think about. We've talked about this connection between autism and hyperhidrosis. But what if there's an even deeper link there? What if those heightened sensory sensitivities that are so common in autism
Right.
are somehow tied to the body's sweat response? You know, like what if the nervous system's on high alert
Yeah.
and that heightened sensitivity extends to how the body regulates temperature
Right.
and responds to stimuli?
That's a fascinating question.
Yeah.
And it's one that researchers are still exploring.
Yeah.
There's definitely a lot more to learn about the interplay between sensory processing,
Right.
the nervous system, and sweat regulation.
It feels like we've just scratched the surface here,
Yeah, we have.
which is what I love about these deep dives, uncovering those unexpected connections and
Yeah.
prompting further exploration.
Right.
Like, it's so interesting to me how different systems in the body can be interconnected in ways that we might not expect.
For sure.
And we know you're out there listening and soaking all of this in. So we want to hear from you. Have you noticed a connection between sensory sensitivities and sweating,
Yeah.
either personally or in someone you know?
Right.
We're really eager to hear your thoughts
Yes.
and experiences on this.
Please share.
You can share them on our website or social media.
Yeah.
We love a good conversation.
We do.
And, you know, your insights could help us understand this topic even better.
Absolutely.
So maybe your story will spark some new research
Right.
or help somebody else who's struggling
Yeah.
with this.
That would be great.
So thanks for diving deep with us today.
Thanks for having me.
And until next time,
Yeah.
stay curious.